Hi, I'm Ofer Mendelevich, the creator of the AI Explains series.
And I'm Carmen Encisa Steinberg, and I'm a licensed marriage family therapist specializing in working with adults with ADHD and social anxiety here in Silicon Valley. When Ofer told me about the book series that he was creating, I jokingly said, "Hey, I can write a book with you."
And you have so many ideas, and we've actually used AI Explains to transform those ideas into a great book about adult ADHD, guided by your expertise, Carmen, and generated by AI. So now, let's get to the AI-generated summary of the book. Enjoy.
Today, we're diving into something that's so often misunderstood: adult ADHD. We're going to get past all those old stereotypes, because for a lot of people, it's not really about a bouncing body. It's all about a racing mind. For so long, when you heard ADHD, what came to mind? Probably a little boy, right? Bouncing off the walls in a classroom, just can't sit still. The whole idea was, oh, they'll just grow out of it. A childhood thing. End of story. But here's the thing, for so many adults, that picture is just completely wrong. It misses the mark entirely. The hyperactivity, it doesn't just disappear, it goes inward. It becomes this invisible internal storm, a constant churn of thoughts, one after another, with no off switch. So that's where we're going to start. Let's redefine what ADHD actually looks like in adulthood and move way beyond that old school caricature. And this contrast is super common. Let's think about someone we'll call Sarah. At her job, she's an absolute rock star, the one with all the brilliant, innovative ideas. But then she gets home, and it's chaos. A never-ending cycle of forgotten appointments, misplaced keys, you name it. And this isn't about being lazy. Nope. This is the hidden reality of adult ADHD, where you're incredibly capable in one area and just struggling to keep it together in another. And look, Sarah is definitely not alone, not by a long shot. We're talking about millions and millions of adults all over the world. This is not some rare, obscure disorder. It's an incredibly common, but deeply misunderstood part of the human experience. Okay, so what is actually going on inside the brain to make this happen? To really get the why behind the symptoms, we've got to pop the hood and look at the wiring. So, at the very core of all this, we have something called executive functions. The best way to think about them? They're like the CEO of your brain. Seriously, they're the command center that handles all the big stuff: planning, prioritizing, controlling impulses, basically getting things done. Now, in an ADHD brain, that CEO, well, they might be brilliant, but they're also a little overwhelmed and inconsistent. And it's so much more than just paying attention. A struggle with just one of these things, like simply starting a task or keeping your emotions in check, can be enough to completely throw off your entire day. And this isn't just some abstract idea. It's happening at a physical, structural level. The prefrontal cortex, that's the CEO's office, and the basal ganglia, which is kind of like the brain's gatekeeper, they just operate differently. We're talking about a literal, measurable difference in the brain's architecture. And it goes even deeper, down to the messaging system. You've probably heard of dopamine, right? It's that key brain chemical for motivation, reward, and focus. Now, a huge misconception is that people with ADHD have less dopamine. It's more about a difference in how their brain uses it. The whole system is just regulated differently. And that difference has a massive real-world impact. It's why trying to start a boring task can feel physically impossible, like trying to start a car with no gas. But when a new, exciting idea comes along, whoosh, the dopamine floods in, and you get this incredible superpower called hyperfocus, where hours can just vanish. And this is so important to understand. This is not a character flaw. It's not a moral failing. ADD is one of the most heritable conditions out there. We're talking 70 to 80%. It's literally more likely to be passed down genetically than your height. And that one fact just completely demolishes that old, harmful myth that it's all about bad parenting or a lack of willpower. Okay, so if it's this common and it's biological, why on earth is it missed so often in adults? Well, there are a few big reasons. It's because the symptoms don't just vanish, they morph, they go undercover. That kid who was physically running around, as an adult, that energy turns into a relentless internal restlessness. And physical impulsivity, that can turn into impulsive spending or suddenly quitting a job. The struggle is absolutely still there, it's just become invisible to the outside world. And this is a massive issue, especially for women, because for them, the symptoms tend to be quieter, more of the inattentive type. So they become absolute masters of masking, hiding their struggles behind perfectionism. But it's utterly exhausting. And what happens? Their ADHD gets misdiagnosed for years, often as anxiety or depression, while the real root of the problem is never even looked at.
All right, let's get into what might be one of the most painful and honestly least talked about parts of adults' ADHD. We have to talk about the emotional side of things.
This is where we encounter something called rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD. This is not just being sensitive. No way. This is an extreme, intense, almost physical pain that comes from rejection or even just the perception of rejection. The emotional reaction is instantaneous and completely overwhelming. So when that pain gets turned inward, some tiny minor comment can trigger a total emotional collapse. It's like a trap door opens and you're suddenly spiraling down into this pit of shame and self-loathing. You feel completely worthless and just want to disappear. But that pain can also explode outwards. It can instantly morph into this flash of defensive anger. This might look like a sudden, shocking outburst that seems to come out of nowhere and feels completely out of proportion. And the tragic part is, this can really damage the very relationships that person is so afraid of losing. Okay, so understanding all these struggles is absolutely crucial, but that is not the whole story. Not even close. Because we can reframe this whole narrative. We can shift from focusing on the stigma to finding the strength. This is where we get to flip the script. Because that same unique brain wiring that causes all those challenges, it's also the source of some incredible strengths. That nonlinear thinking fuels amazing creativity. Hyperfocus makes you an expert in things you're passionate about. And navigating a world not built for you builds serious resilience. These aren't just silver linings, they are legitimate superpowers. And there are totally ways to manage the challenging parts. Here's a super simple but powerful tool, the stop method. When you feel that big emotional wave coming, you just 1. Stop what you're doing. 2. Take a deep breath. 3. Observe the thought and feeling without judging it. And 4. Only then do you proceed. It's all about creating that tiny, crucial space between the trigger and your reaction. This really gets to the heart of the entire journey. Just understanding, truly accepting that your brain is simply wired differently, that it's not broken, that's the whole foundation. That's the first step that lets you drop all that self-blame and pick up some self-compassion instead. And that is the real key. So it completely reframes how we look at all of this, which leaves us with one final thought. What if your greatest challenges are actually the source of your most unique strengths? What if that racing mind that can't stand a boring meeting is the very same engine that can come up with a world-changing idea? What if they're not separate things at all, but just two sides of the same incredible coin?